Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, in the news this week, Russia and the U.S. having a huge tit-for-tat, expelling diplomats. We'll have those details. Also, could the U.S. dollar be losing its foothold on the global economy? Big story there that people are talking about. And also, North Korean President Kim Jong-un making a historic visit to China. We'll have those details, so these stories and more. But first, the Appalachian Mountains make up the landscape of eastern Kentucky, and the people of Martin County in particular are pleased to call themselves self-sufficient. However, life there is lacking one of the most basic of needs in order to maintain that self-sufficiency: clean water. Well, the water coming from faucets there is blue, brown, and yellow in color, and always murky looking. Not something you would desire to drink, much less used to bathe in.
Oh, I bet. Gary Ball, editor-in-chief of the local paper, The Mountain Citizen, told CNN there's no way he would drink it. And in fact, he says, it's like a third world country here as far as water. We let our water system just dilapidate to the point of collapse. Well, Mr. Ball has made water the front page story of his newspaper for most of his career.
In 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson came to Martin County and declared a war on poverty. But 54 years later, the citizens of eastern Kentucky, as well as many others, still say clean drinking water, a basic human right, is their #1 issue.
Well, I wonder why they haven't really taken the opportunity to update their water infrastructure to ensure safe, clean
so many
drinking
years
water.
ago.
Yeah, and in the mountains, too. You'd think they'd have clean drinking water there. Well, since we can't live without water, residents like Hope Workman have had to be resourceful. Twice a week, Hope and her daughter drive up a dirt path on the side of a mountain. 20 years ago, she placed a small PVC pipe less than 4 feet long into the hillside to tap a spring just to collect clean drinking water.
One time she went 10 days without water and decided to use her swimming pool as a makeshift reservoir. Now, in it, she collects rainwater, which supplies her with enough water to use for basic needs like bathing and washing laundry. She has no choice but to use this reservoir all year round. Now, in order to get to the water through a thick layer of ice, she has used a chainsaw as a drill and then siphoned the water out by mouth with a garden hose in 17-degree weather.
Wow. Well, that's what it's come to, she says. The rainwater collecting in her pool is better than that which comes out of her faucets. This is not unusual. However, the American Society of Civil Engineers gives the United States drinking water infrastructure a grade of a D. That's right. But what makes the water so contaminated in Martin County is the question.
Well, water originally comes from the Tug Fork River. From there, it's pumped into the Curb Reservoir. Then it makes its way to a very aged and dilapidated water treatment center. Now, after the water is treated, about 2 million gallons per day of fairly clean water then heads off to residents through multiple channels of pipes.
So not only is the water not pristine when it leaves the plant, but the underground highway of pipes are old and cracked. Because of this, more than 50% of the treated water leaks out into the ground and never even reaches homes and businesses. If that wasn't bad enough, the chemicals getting into the cracked pipes is contaminating the water to extremely high levels.
EPA data reveals Martin County District has violated federal drinking water standards every quarter between October 2014 and September 2017. Now, in fact, until just a few months ago, the district's nearly 10,000 customers received notices that their water exceeds the standard or maximum contaminant levels for potentially cancer-causing chemicals. How would you like to get one of those letters in the mail?
Yeah, it's for something that is vital to your life,
absolutely.
you know, and now you're being told that it could potentially cause a life-threatening disease. Doctors in the area have a difficult job. While they can't tell their patients the water is safe, they also feel they can't tell them it isn't safe. But Eastern Kentucky has some of the highest cancer rates in the country, and of course the quality of the water stands out to residents as the culprit.
Yeah, tough situation.
Yeah, scary.
Well, we now look at a political scandal halfway around the world in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is probably the most famous Israeli politician of his time. However, he could be indicted on at least 4 counts of corruption if police investigations find adequate evidence. Now, one member of the Knesset, Ms. Svetlova, told the press, even if it would be only 1 case out of 4 of them, I would think that would be enough for us to say that this man doesn't belong in the prime minister chair.
Svetlova doesn't, however, believe he should serve time in prison. Just stepping down from office would be enough for her. While there is strong support for Netanyahu's right-wing party in Jewish society, there is much less in the occupied territories. Well, many hope if Netanyahu was absent, a more likable personality would become prime minister.
Netanyahu tells his people there is no one to negotiate with on the Palestinian side. He also says there is no substitute for him as a leader. But some say Netanyahu's way of dismissing everyone else is merely to hold on to power. Now, analysts say that that's his style, and it works for him to some extent.
Interesting. Right now, all eyes are on Israel's Attorney General, Avigdor Mandelblit, formerly an army judge. He was appointed to Attorney General by Netanyahu. Now he will have to decide on what occurs to the prime minister. So the man that put him in office, he's going to kind of basically decide what his future is going to be. But Jeff, his decision will be based upon the strength of the evidence that the police gather. And if we remember from before, they were still in the process of trying to gather information on the prime minister.
Well, the United States and Russia are playing a game of tit-for-tat with their diplomats. The American ambassador to Russia is protesting the Kremlin's expulsion of 60 U.S. embassy staff in Moscow. Now, the retaliation came after Washington expelled all its Russian diplomats in the U.S. after the poisoning of a former Russian spy in London earlier this year.
As part of a worldwide effort to condemn the Kremlin, more than 24 countries, including the U.S., have expelled Russian diplomats. However, the Kremlin said they weren't the ones to initiate a diplomatic war. They were forced to take retaliatory steps on what they call hostile illegal actions by Washington. The 60 U.S. diplomats have 1 week to pack their bags and get out.
Well, 28 countries in all have expelled more than 150 Russian diplomats since the nerve agent attack, believing there is enough evidence to point the finger at Russia. Now, some are calling this the worst diplomatic crisis since the Cold War.
The Russians deny any involvement and insist this is nothing more than a Washington bullying campaign. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova told CBS News, "I think that this is what is the main goal of the United States and Great Britain, to make Russia be regarded on the world stage and international stage like a hooligan."
And they are actually doing that. If 28 countries already have expelled those diplomats, they are certainly making Russia look bad.
That's right.
Well, for more on the conflicts between Russia and the U.S., we now turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee. Larry, what else has Russia and the U.S. been arguing about?
Questions are arising concerning the tit-for-tat back and forth between the U.S. and Russia following the recent poisoning of a Russian double agent. The suspicions are that the situation is far from over, and analysts are expecting an escalation. There are now 28 nations who will follow suit with the U.S. and expel Russian diplomats from their countries. Commentators believe that the solidarity displayed by the cooperative efforts of the nations has taken Moscow by surprise and is an indication of just how seriously the U.S. and its allies are viewing the alleged attack. The conversation concerning the state of relations between the two superpowers also includes the prospects of a renewed arms race, one which President Trump has reportedly informed President Putin that he would win. The hostility between the two quartet members is being traced to differences concerning a number of events, including alleged election tampering and the conflicts in the Ukraine and Syria. The Western nations reportedly perceive Russia as making moves to weaken and separate their alliances, and it is for that reason also that they have felt it necessary to send a message of solidarity. Back stateside, the president is also pitching the possibility of withdrawing troops from Syria, though he hasn't apparently discussed that idea with the Pentagon, who was reportedly surprised by the announcement. The incident is being regarded as yet another example of the sort of division that exists within the current administration, and yet another instance of contradiction in behavior by the president, who was critical of President Obama for making the same sort of forewarning announcements during his presidency, but now President Trump is doing and saying the same thing. The discussion over the role that Moscow is allegedly playing to try and shape the governments of other nations through election tampering is still being had, with the accusation that Russia, which has many arms and tentacles according to the State Department, has attempted to manipulate not just elections here in America, but in several other nations such as Mexico and France as well. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert also fielded questions here lately on what exactly that the 60 Russian diplomats who were recently expelled from the country were doing. The official dodged the question somewhat by merely choosing to state that the country will be safer and better off without their presence, and that these sorts of matters are tracked very closely by certain departments. To which one skeptical journalist responded, yes, I'm sure a lot of things are tracked very closely, like the WMDs in Iraq as well. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, it definitely seems that the U.S. is working hard to make Russia look bad, but they don't really have anything to say what they're actually doing that's bad.
Great point.
I guess things will move forward as we look over a little bit farther to the Far East, and we talk about China and their country right now that is actually preparing to challenge the petrodollar with the Petro Yuan. Well, Max Kaiser of RT's Kaiser Report spoke in an interview with RT regarding the move by Beijing and said that it's a very brave move, seeing as previous countries, or the leaders of those countries, who tried the same thing have met with a terrible end. Leaders such as Saddam Hussein and, of course, Muammar Gaddafi, who wanted to trade oil for something other than dollars, of course, they ended up dead not too long after that. Well, China is also said to be the main buyer of Aramco, a state oil facility coming down the pipe, which is thought to be a geopolitical move to de-dollarize oil purchases along with countries like Russia and Saudi Arabia.
In fact, this is a growing trend, Kaiser continued, as countries want to escape from the growing U.S. military-industrial complex. Countries are tired of funding U.S. military adventurism by being a party to an empire of debt through the U.S. dollar as it's known around the world. China, Russia, Iran, and other countries want autonomy and don't want to be ruled over by the U.S. dollar anymore. Countries can purchase oil with the yuan, and that's convertible into gold, which will let them escape the hegemony of the world's reserve currency, which is the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, it gives a lot more flexibility having that resource too. Continuing in the Far East, Chinese Catholics have a choice regarding how they worship. They can either pray within state-sanctioned churches, or they can do it in secret. Well, as the world prepares to celebrate Easter, Chinese Catholics may have a different scenario, as the Vatican and China have come to an agreement that may be knocking at the door. Well, this agreement will improve diplomatic relations between China and the Vatican. Many worshipers in China are pleased with the agreement, and they say that they hope that they'll be able to see the Pope because he's an important figure to the Catholic Church.
Francisco Sisi, a China-Vatican relations analyst who interviewed the Pope in the past, said that this agreement could open up the way for a diplomatic office for the Vatican in China. Sisi said that this could happen within the year, he speculates. Now, something else that would need to be worked out is who can officially appoint bishops, the Vatican or the state.
The leaders of China and North Korea recently met in a historic visit by the North Korean leader. Yoon used his visit to show that despite the strained relations between the countries, he was doing his part to reduce the stress regarding the Korean peninsula. A Chinese newspaper quoted Kim Jong-un saying, "The issue of denuclearization of the Korean peninsula can be resolved if the United States responds to our efforts with goodwill, create an atmosphere of peace and stability while taking progressive and synchronous measures for the realization of peace."
President Xi Jinping acknowledged North Korea's efforts. Now, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said on behalf of Xi Jinping that what North Korea is doing is improving the Korean Peninsula issue and that China is open to hopeful suggestions to the denuclearization as well as peace, stability, and long-term stability of the region and the whole world. Now, this visit took place just 1 month before the Korea's leader planned an important visit to the U.S.
U.S. President Trump tweeted that he was optimistic about the meeting and was looking forward to meeting Kim. As a note, North Korea began testing its nuclear missiles in 2006 and has tested 5 more since then, including its most powerful nuclear missile test to date last year. And of course, they've also tested ICBMs, which are targeted at the U.S. mainland. And of course, around that time period of 2006 was that we've seen the upheaval kind of in that regarding that fourth part of the earth and nuclear weapon testing and of course the potential for nuclear war as well.
Right. Well, and lastly, who would you think globally is the most powerful man? Well, some would say the U.S. president or the president of another country. But take a look at this video to a presentation about one such man in the world's eyes and see for yourself.
It looks like they're going to have a lot of information on the Pope and the Vatican as well. Well, history has proven over the years that most men don't have the character or the fortitude to stand up for morality, and when put to the test will do whatever seems right in their own eyes, as we see taking place with our world leaders right now. And of course, as a result of that, we're edging ever so closely to the brink of nuclear war. And of course, once that takes place, then, I think we'll be at that 12 o'clock and that doomsday clock.
It's just a matter of picking up the pieces after that.
That's right.
If you'd like to learn more about these stories, please contact the House of Yahweh and request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how. You can write the House of Yahweh at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, Yahweh.com, YeshurahHawkins.com, Yahweh'sBranch.com, or you can visit our website at YPNnews.com. Also, you can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. Any international calls, please call the number that's on your screen now. And if you haven't already checked out 2 of the greatest Bible study tools on the market, absolutely free, the Yisrael Says program and the Ask Yisrael program, you can do so by going and looking at their website at YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com. Very user-friendly programs that are guaranteed to answer any scriptural questions that you have.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, the man teaching morality and true peaceful character, Yishra Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Hammerman.
Thank you for watching.